Hi, Matt Baker here, and today I want to teach you how to get up and running with Microsoft Project 2010. We're going to learn the basic fundamentals of setting up a schedule using screen layouts and project templates and some other things that I think you'll find useful if you're not familiar with the software. So let's get started. The first thing we do when we set up a schedule from scratch is we want to set up our project defaults. So we go to the File tab and click on Options, and as you can see here, there's quite a list of options to choose from. Ways to display the calendar, ways to define a day, a month, a year, so that the software understands what the schedule information is on a calendar basis. And you can set up these defaults for the existing file that you're working in, or you can also set this up for all new projects. So this is a real time saver. Keeps schedulers from having to reinvent the wheel every time they pull up a new file to work in. So as you can see, you can make adjustments for how you account for earned value or physical progress, and how you want to define critical path. You may not understand right now as you're learning scheduling for the first time. This is just some advanced features in the software where you can set up your defaults. So what we're looking at here is the empty shell of the schedule. We've got a Gantt chart on the right and we've got bars on the left. And what I'm doing here is adjusting the way I look at the Gantt chart on the right. I've set up a two-tier column system to show years and months. And I'm going to set up some grid lines so that you can easily follow the activity list over to the Gantt chart. So I put lines for each schedule row, and then I put some column lines in for the year, and I'm going to put some column lines in for the month. So some people might think this looks a little busy, but I like it because I'm used to looking at things on graph paper, and it helps my eye follow from the activity over to the bar represented on the schedule. So it's real easy to create columns, and you can drag and click and drag and adjust the widths of columns, and double click on the heading and pull down a long list of options that you can choose to display various things on the schedule. So that's a calendar column that I'm pulling up. I think that's pretty useful when you're putting activities together. You can easily assign a calendar to all the activities. And then I've created a cost column that we'll look at a little later. So now I'm setting up some settings for my Gantt chart bars. So I say I want my tasks to be green, and I want to have the description next to the bar. And I like the same for milestones. And I'm going to do the same thing for the summary bars. So now that I've done that, I want to show you how to create a calendar using change work time feature in the software. You can go and create a copy of the standard calendar, and you rename it to 5 days, 10 hours. Wrote a little shorthand, said 5D times 10H for 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. And I'm going to select the days and create a 10-hour workday that starts at 6 a.m., stops at 11 a.m. for lunch, picks back up at 12, and finishes the workday at 5 p.m. So that parameter will affect Monday through Friday, the activities or the days of the week that I have highlighted. So Sunday and Saturday should be blank. So now that I've done that, I'm going to fill in my exception days. These are holidays or non-work time that you're aware of that affects your project. So I know we're going to be off the 4th of July, so I select that date. And then I select another holiday, Labor Day. And you can go in and fill in all these non-work time that affects your project. And so when you create activities that fall within those date ranges, it will move the activity to happen after the date has finished, or it will overlap it and add some extra duration so that it will not schedule work to happen during those exception dates. So now what I'm doing here is saving a template because I like this layout and I want to pull it up again in the future when I'm setting up projects. It's a real time saver. That way you don't have to go in and recreate calendars and exception dates each and every time that you have a schedule to create. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to frame out my schedule with a summary bar called Project Title. And you can see it's got all the Microsoft features. You can adjust size and font and color and do a wide variety of things that you can't do in other schedule softwares, I've noticed. So now that I've done that, I want to start with a start milestone. And then I'm going to start filling in some tasks. As you can imagine, this could be any schedule, large or small. I just wanted to make a concept schedule for you to see how the software works. As the goal of the presentation is to learn how to drive the software. And I'm going to finish it out with a project finish milestone. So now I'll go through the duration column and plug in some arbitrary durations. And of course milestones don't have durations, so I put in 0 days. And as you plug in the durations, you can see the activities lengthen on the Gantt chart. And they're green, just like I set them up in the bar chart settings. So they're all happening at the same time right now because I have no logic. And the default settings have them starting on the current status date. So I'm going to assign the 5/10 calendar to all those activities, and you can see the durations of some of them changed. That's because when you don't assign a calendar to an activity, it assumes your default calendar setting, which is 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So when we assigned the 5/10 calendar, all of a sudden it had 2 more hours each day to work with, and it shortened the durations of those activities. So now what I'm doing is assigning logic by literally clicking on the milestone and dragging it over to task 1. I'm going to do the same thing with task 2. So I've assigned finish start relationships between the start milestone and tasks 1 and 2. I'm going to do the same thing between task 2 and task 3. And then I'm going to enter logic a little bit differently using the columns. You can see I plugged in numbers in the successor column. And then a third way is to highlight activities and hit the link feature. So this could, if you had 100 activities that you needed to assign finish to start relationships to, you could quickly highlight all those activities and link them all together. So now I'm indenting the activities under the summary bar, and it created a summary bar at the top called Project Title, and that'll come in handy when we're assigning indirect resources. So now what we're looking at is a nice frame out of a basic schedule. You've got the start, the finish, you've got a summary bar, and so I'm making some changes to the logic because I want tasks 4 and 5 to happen at the same time. So I changed the relationship from finish to start to start. So when task 4 starts, task 5 is starting simultaneously. I just want to be sure that all the activities are linked to the start and somehow either directly or indirectly related to the start and finish milestones of the schedule. I don't want any open ends in the schedule because every activity has the potential to delay the finish of the project. So this is good scheduling, just to make sure that you have all of your ends tied up in the schedule. Now what I've done here is I've selected critical tasks by right-clicking on the Gantt chart, and this highlighted the critical path. And I'm making an adjustment to the critical path bar to say show me the name of the activity next to the critical task. And so this is important because a critical task has zero float, which means it has the potential to delay the project. If it delays, then the whole project delays, mainly the finish date of the project. So I've gone to the resource sheet in the schedule because we're getting ready to resource load the schedule. So I put in some direct workers, some indirect workers, and some materials. And you can, if you get a long list of resources, you can choose the initials column to create unique identifiers. And if you're monitoring a fixed number of resources, you can assign the maximum number that you have, so you know when you go over those numbers, they'll highlight red, and you can see where your resource problems are occurring and fix them. And I'm assigning dollar figures to the resource amounts and assigning the calendars. And so we have $50,000 worth of materials. And we'll go back to our Gantt chart and start assigning these resources. So our direct workers, the people who are working on the task, we've got a crew of 10 workers. Apply them to the first 3 tasks. You can see I'm directly typing in units and hitting the button that turns to OK. OK means it accepts those resource assignments. So I put our crew of 10 guys on task 3. Now task 4 and 5, I'm going to split into 2 crews of 5. That way we don't go over our resource maximum resource amount of 10 direct workers. And then the 2 crews converge on task 6, and we have our crew of 10 guys once again. So now I'm going to apply the materials to the schedule. We have $50,000 worth of material we're going to install. We're going to install that material on task 3, so I changed the description to install material just for my reference, so I know which activity that cost applies to. And as I've revealed the cost column, you see that those rates for the resources are applied to the activities when you assign them. And this title bar you can actually add our indirect workers to. We've got a couple of project managers that we want to assign their fixed costs throughout the project. That $422,000 represents what we think the project is going to cost in materials and labor. So this is pretty useful information when you're developing an estimate or when you're tracking progress. You can pull up resource curves and resource histograms so you can see what your resource requirements are, if there's any conflicts, or if you're peaking during a certain type of period where it's not going to be a good plan, for example, to peak during the holidays, and you can make schedule adjustments to make a schedule that is realistic and feasible. So I'm showing you some different options that you can choose simply by right-clicking on the left bars of these layouts. You can either show a graph at the bottom of the screen or another type of chart that shows man hours per month, or whatever your time scale setting is set to. You can show per week or per day. I find this very useful when putting together progress curves. You can highlight this data, pull up cumulative columns, and transfer it to Excel. You can actually put together some reports that export into Excel really nicely. That's the great thing about Microsoft Project, is it dovetails really nicely with other Microsoft products. And when you're done, you can go to the print settings and set it up just like you would any other Microsoft product. And you go to page setup, and there's the tabs to adjust your custom header or footer settings, or if you want a legend or a revision box, you can create that and go in and modify it. And that's basically how you get up and running with Microsoft Project 2010. Hopefully, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the software, this will encourage you to experiment and become familiar with the software. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.